time, but we figured now that you're here, we'll kick things off. Okay, welcome back to Senate Education. We have with us is Jennifer Samuelson, who is the chair of the State Board of Education, and we're just going to go around the room just as a refresher.
Thank you.
Senator Terry Williams, Rutland District.
Thank you.
Dave Weeks, Rutland District.
Campion, Beck County.
Martine Gulick, Chittenden Central.
Not Shane Wyndham
County.
And we have you, and specifically, we have a handout right in front of us to talk about the search for a new Secretary of Education.
Sure. So, and there was a tiny little update. I slid in another slide a couple hours ago. So if that hasn't been shared with you.
Did you see that new slide?
yeah, no, I got the more recent.
Or you have the more recent. And if you don't mind, I'm not sure, I have not looked at this. One of the things that's sort of, we're looking at the state board in general. We're going to have conversations about it. If you could also maybe just tell us a little bit about not only this process, but if there's, how am I trying to say this? If there's anything sort of government function. Well, let me think. I guess maybe I'll just let you go and then I'll interrupt the question.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
I apologize.
So I'm just going to look at my screen. I don't think I need to share my screen because you guys can follow along. And I'll be honest,
Okay.
you know,
You would like it?
No. What about if there are observers?
Oh, great point. Yes,
Okay.
we should, just in case there are people.
okay. Do you want
out
me to
there.
share my screen?
That would be terrific.
Let me,
And,
well, and actually I don't have internet.
Oh, Mr. Feldman can do it, right? Yeah, it'll just take a minute.
Okay.
We're very popular community. A lot of people watch, not only in this state, but around the country. So, if you believe that. But while he's doing that, I think it is okay for me to kick things off.
Okay, sure. Well, what I was starting to say was, I'll be honest, I kind of dusted off. This was a presentation that I gave at our November monthly board meeting. So slightly updated, just to acknowledge that, you know, I'm here before you guys today. And I also put in, I did this last year where I had the state board membership. It's changed a little bit. We've got a couple of new members. And then the other thing that I put in, last year I noted where everyone was from, and there's, you know, good cross-representation from throughout the state. What I,
Is that there? Oh, so
I sent you the email to join.
Oh, okay. So then, great. So if you go to your email, click on the Zoom link, I think then she will be able to throw things up.
Yes.
The other possibility, Morgan, would be for you to just throw it up.
so my issue is I don't have an internet connection. So I would need someone to give me.
So Morgan, why don't you throw it up on your computer? Please, continue.
So is that gonna work for you to do that, or do you want to send me the password and?
Oh, do you just need a password for the Wi-Fi? Does anybody know? I don't think
No, I think what you should do is, if you can, if you just throw it up, that'd be
Okay.
great.
So what I added to this year is, we have 11 members, including interim Secretary of Education Heather Boucher. But I also wrote down sort of the different capacities, or, you know, how we came to the board, you know, what it was that was relevant in terms of serving on the State Board of Education. So if you have that, you know, I'm the chair. I'm also the chair of the Glen Hall School Board. I'm also an attorney. Dr. Tammy Colby is a UPM professor. She's also the principal researcher at AIR. Mohammed Job is one of our newer full board members. He's the director of multilingual learner programs in the Louisville School District. Gray Farron, and I'll just pop ahead to the bottom, Aaliyah Wilburn, those are our two student members. They're both new this year, so Aaliyah's just serving 1 year and her term will end in June, and then Gray will continue on with us for another year. Kim Gleason.
And would you say where they're from?
Oh, that is a good question.
That's okay, if you don't know, we're just.
Yeah,
Fine.
I don't remember off the top of my head, I'm sorry. I want to say Grace from Derby. That's a yes. So Kim has a lot of history, both with VSBA and also former chair of the Essex Westford School District. She's also a substitute teacher. Lyle Jepson was a former, wow, I mean, this is a condensed version. He was a former teacher, elementary school principal, high school principal, director of the Stafford Technical Center. He's had a bunch of different positions. Tom Lovett was a teacher and former head of school at St. John's Wort Academy. Jenna O'Farrell is also a former teacher, and then she was the assistant principal and principal of the St. John's Wort School. And Rich Warner is the chair of the Wyndham Central Supervisory Union, as well as the chair of the River Valley School District. So again, sort of thinking about our geographic diversity, I think we also bring a bunch of different perspectives to the work that we do, which is great, because I think it really, in my opinion, has allowed for some really rich conversations. So moving on, the State Board of Education Secretary Search Committee was comprised of myself as the chair, and I was joined by Lyle Jepson and Jenna O'Farrell.
So just for clarification, the whole board is not involved in the search?
Ultimately, they were, but
Okay.
the way the board has been working since I've been a part of it is we've really sort of farmed a lot of our work out to committees in the first instance, and then
Okay.
the committee comes back to the full board
I see.
and we have a full discussion.
Thank you.
And yeah, and I'll get to that, but that's a good question. So the committee meetings, we met 11 times over 2.5 months. And I kind of color coded the steps in the process. It was really sort of like working with wet clay. You know, we got a letter from the governor, we had, 2 controlling statutes. And then the question was, how do we turn this into something that will allow us to conduct, thoughtful interviews of qualified candidates and ultimately make that recommendation to the governor. So the steps that we established in the process were to establish the framework, develop and advertise the job posting, draft questions and create a scoring rubric, review applications and interview selected candidates, and then debrief them after interviews. And to that, I should add, then meet as a full board to talk about the process. And our objective was, in compliance with the statute, to recommend at least 3 candidates to the governor for his consideration. So the next slide really goes through establishing the framework, and you all can read it. When we started this process, the first question really was, what's been done before, and what can we do better? So we really didn't find any information about the 2016 secretary search, no agendas, no minutes, there wasn't really any information there. So we really relied heavily on the 2018 secretary search, and we did have the agenda and the minutes from that. That sort of formed a framework maybe, and then from there we looked at what we could do to make that even better. So the first thing that we did was we invited, really at the governor's office suggestion, Department of Human Resources. And I will say that Beth Vestigi was invaluable, and Keisha Pollard. They really helped us to understand, how to go about crafting a job position. They gave us a booklet, which became my Bible in the moment. I mean, it had everything from, how to create a scoring rubric, how to develop questions, which questions are better than others and why, how to send out letters of invitation or, sorry, you didn't pass the stage. It was really, really helpful. So we are indebted to them for their help. The second thing we did was we had a public comment hearing. So this, I was out on a run one day and I thought, what, this would be really great. Like, we would love to invite members of the public to help us because we're 9 people. And it would be great to get other thoughts and perspectives. And in that instance, we were really assisted by the Vermont School Boards Association, Vermont Principals Association, the Vermont Superintendents Association, because they put out an email blast to their constituents, and they had 2 questions that they asked, and then they compiled all of that information and submitted it to the board. And I want to say there were about 100 comments that they compiled for us, which we then, used as we were determining what questions to ask of candidates.
Senator Hewitt.
I'm so glad you brought that up because I was going to ask that question. I felt so lucky to be able to reply to that survey. And so I'm happy to hear that it did sort of come into play.
Absolutely.
In the process. Great. Thank you.
Yeah. And then the third thing we did is, before we posted the job description, and I believe this was a recommendation of Representative Christie, was to run the job description not just by Department of Human Resources, but also by the Office of Racial Equity. So we thought that was a really good idea. It actually, it took a few weeks to get a response back, but I think it was well worth the wait, and it made for a much better product. So, we posted the we posted the application in multiple different venues. We got 18 responses, and the last couple sort of came in the last couple of days of the application period. And, we were happy with 18, but sort of given those last minute entries, we thought, we'll push it out for another week and see if we get anyone else. And so we got one more. We conducted.
So sorry to interrupt, 18 applicants to be the Secretary of Education?
Well, it ended up being 19, but yes.
I mean, it strikes me as, I don't know what others would think, and I realize many people would probably see this job search and probably sort of self-identify or maybe immediately recognize that they might not be qualified, but I would hope for, frankly, everything we might have gotten more. And so it begs, where do we advertise? How do we? Right. No, I understand it's there, but you have to be sitting at home checking the Agency of Education website all the time to know.
Well, it's.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. It was posted on Success Factors, School Spring, Education Week, Facebook, LinkedIn, Diversity Jobs, Indeed, Glassdoor, Career Builder, and an AOE press release.
And I don't know, you've, I think, probably been more involved with searches, maybe you have as well, to do it, but does that feel good to you guys?
It's a small group, but it's what it is. Can't force
Right.
the market to respond.
But let me just ask this, would people have said, hey, what I might do instead is, I'm not asking that you would have done this, but maybe delegated, let's take a look at who the associate secretaries of education are in the United States, or is there a way to reach out to somebody in another state and just kind of do it that way? Or is there any kind of executive job search company that could have done it,
Well,
Headhunter.
so two things. One, the other aspect that didn't make it onto the slide was I do know that we had board members reach out to their personal contacts to say, hey, the position is open, you should apply.
Right.
And I do know that did happen. So personal connection, word of mouth, I think, that, and my sense is that probably garnered a few of the applications that we received. With regard to a national firm or headhunter, that's a great question. My response is, first of all, Department of Human Resources didn't feel that it was necessary.
Okay.
And I believe that the Secretary of Education is the only cabinet level position that is not appointed by the governor.
Well, that's kind of a little bit of what I'm thinking about is I've always been very public about taking this role away from the state board, allowing the governor to appoint his or her Secretary of Education. Since that individual sits on their cabinet, they should have the complete, in my opinion, hiring and firing. What we ended up with was a compromise several years ago. That's what we have right now. For those of you that don't know, at one point the state board did the hiring and did the firing completely without the governor's say whatsoever. And now we have a bit of a hybrid, which I think many people do feel is working pretty well, where the state board does the search, puts 3 names forward. So yeah, Senator Dewar.
I just, to piggyback on what you're saying, even in my small district in Chittenden County, like relatively small, we hired a national search company to help us find our superintendent, and it seems as though this is a job that's big enough and important enough that it probably would have been a good decision as far as I'm concerned to have.
And we've heard that suggestion from other members of the public. However, again, it's a different, what I understood is that this is different than hiring a superintendent because, again, it's really someone that if it were any other secretary, the governor would have outright authority and wouldn't conduct, probably wouldn't rely on a headhunter to do that work. The other thing is we don't have the budget. We have a $70,000 budget and that has to pay for everything. And so we certainly did not have money for a headhunter.
Can you say we in the state board?
Yeah. So, and I want to assure the committee that we did get, people that we thought were very well qualified. And it did, lead to some really rich conversations and some hard choices, frankly. And we drew candidates from more than Vermont, Massachusetts, and New York. We did get them, from other states that were not contiguous. So I think we got a pretty good cross-section of applicants. Then moving on, the committee, and at this point, the committee really moved more from being open to the public to moving into executive session. And so, we had one meeting that was devoted to what kind of questions would we ask of candidates. And, I think we had a list of maybe 45 or 50 questions that we whittled down to 15. And then we spent some time, the three of us, talking about why are we asking this question? What would a model response look like? What are we trying to elicit from this question? And on a scale of 1 to 5, what would be a 5? What would be a 1? Just so that we knew what we were looking for when we actually asked the questions. So we created the scoring rubric as well, and then we also framed it, and again, this was a great suggestion from Department of Human Resources, where we asked the same questions of every candidate. I asked the same questions, Lyle asked the same questions, Jenna asked the same questions. I'd never experienced an interview process like that before. It was really revealing. I thought that was a wonderful suggestion because it was fascinating how different the answers were. And by sort of having that prep work that we put into it beforehand, it really allowed good answers to shine. And the ones that weren't as good to, reveal that as well. After we met with we interviewed 7 candidates. We then had 2 additional committee meetings where we again met in executive session and discussed the candidates. And then we brought all of that, the questions, the scoring rubric, and our thoughts before the full board at our November 15th monthly board meeting. Met in executive session with the full board and it was a long executive session, but we came out of it and, it was a unanimous decision to forward 3 names to governor. So that letter went out, right after that meeting on November 15th. And at this point, we've done what we were authorized to do or charged to do by statute, and so now it's in the governor's hands.
The 3 individuals know that their names have been put forward?
Correct. For the 7 people who were interviewed, I called every one of them and said either their name had been forwarded to the governor and they should expect a call from the governor's office, or they were not forwarded, just to let them know. And then we also followed up with an email.
Did you happen to know, I know it's not your responsibility, if the governor has interviewed the candidates?
You'd have to ask the governor's office. I believe so.
Okay. And that's where we're at. And that was again when?
November 15th.
So the governor has 3 candidates. We have an interim secretary. We'll reach out to the governor's office to better understand where things lie at this point, stand at this point. Any other questions from Ms. Sims?
No,
Please.
just an observation, it seems like a long, 2 months that seems a long time that nothing's come out.
Yeah.
Well, I got 2 holidays, 2
Right.
significant holidays.
Okay.
This is a pretty high level position. I think governor's office needs the time that they need. 2 months is not excessive. I would.
Thank you.
Do have one
Please,
question.
yes.
Ms. Samuelson's artwork on her laptop
Oh,
is intriguing. I'm wondering if somebody painted
I would guess it was probably Monet, but no, this is more than you asked for. All of my kids are now between the ages of 18 and 23, and a few years ago we decided instead of one person being Santa, we have Secret Santa, and so we switch names and everyone has a budget and mom and dad pay for it. But one of my Secret Santa requests was I'd like a new laptop cover, and one of my kids picked it up for me.
that. I thought maybe one of your kids had painted.
No.
So it sort of slides, it's a cover.
Exactly.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. That's very nice. Very nice. Okay, I see no other questions. This has been very helpful and informative. I really appreciate you coming in, and now we can go up with the governor's office and see if they have any update for us or when we might expect something.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you very
Good to
much.
see you all.
I'm not sure Monet did